By the time Susie Berning stood beneath the lights of the World Golf Hall of Fame, the record had already survived half a century. 11 LPGA Tour victories, 4 major championships, 3 U.S. Women's Open titles. Only a handful of women in history had ever matched that last number. Berning had defeated brutal golf courses, survived changing eras, and won major championships while raising a young family. At 5 feet 2 inches, she had built a career without overwhelming distance, without modern training technology, and without the financial machinery that now surrounds elite athletes. The image was finally complete. The champion had reached the hall, but one detail disturbed the celebration. Susie Berning was the last of the 6 women who had won at least 3 U.S. Women's Opens to be inducted. Her achievements had not changed. The institution's recognition of them had, and that raises a colder question. How could a player win the most demanding championship in American women's golf 3 times and still become almost invisible to the generations that followed? The easy explanation is that history forgets. The more uncomfortable explanation is that sports do not simply remember greatness. They measure it, they package it, they decide which numbers deserve repetition and which achievements are allowed to fade. Susie Berning's career exposes the weakness in that system, because the numbers that made her exceptional were not the numbers the industry eventually learned to sell. She was not the longest player. She did not accumulate 50 victories. She was not constantly available to television, sponsors, or the expanding celebrity economy around professional golf. Her advantage was quieter. She understood how to lower a score, not through one perfect swing, through the removal of unnecessary damage. That idea sounds ordinary now. In her era, it was almost invisible. Berning did not begin as the obvious face of a sporting revolution. Her path into golf started near a municipal course in Oklahoma City after her family moved there during her teenage years. She wanted to caddy alongside her older brothers. The head professional at Lincoln Park UC, Ferguson, told her that carrying golf bags was not something girls did. The message was clear. The golf course was available. The role was not. A runaway horse changed the arrangement. While Berning was caring for horses near the course, one animal became frightened by a train, escaped and damaged 2 greens. Ferguson summoned the terrified teenager to the golf shop. Instead of punishing her, he asked whether she could teach his children to ride. A friendship began. Later, when U.S. Women's Open champion Patty Berg visited Lincoln Park for a clinic, Ferguson persuaded Berning to watch. She had previously dismissed golf as a silly game. Berg's personality changed her mind. Ferguson gave her equipment and instruction. Within a few years, the girl who had been refused permission to caddy was winning state championships. Her rise was fast. Berning won 3 consecutive Oklahoma high school championships. She earned financial support to attend Oklahoma City University and competed on the men's golf team years before Title IX forced American colleges to provide more equal athletic opportunities. Coach Abe Lemons reportedly entered her name on lineup cards as S. Maxwell. Opponents would discover only later that the player across from them was a woman. The disguise was practical. The system was not prepared for the person behind the initial. Berning joined the LPGA Tour in 1964 and was named Rookie of the Year. 1 season later, she captured the Women's Western Open, then recognized as a major championship. She was small. She was not especially long. But her coach remembered something more important. She practiced all day, especially around the greens, chipping, pitching, bunker play, putting the shots that rarely appear in glamorous advertisements, but often decide who survives a major championship. The professional game she entered was still financially fragile. The LPGA had been founded only 14 years earlier. Its earliest players had not simply competed in tournaments. They had helped create them, promote them, and keep the tour alive. Women's professional golf had stars. It did not yet possess the commercial security that modern audiences assume. That context matters. Because in 1968, when Berning won her first U.S. Women's Open, the total purse was $25,000. Her winner's share was $5,000. In 2026, the champion of the same tournament received $2.5 million from a $12.5 million purse. $5,000, then $2.5 million. A 500-fold difference in the winner's check. The comparison is not an accusation. The errors cannot be measured by money alone. But money determines visibility. It funds promotion. It attracts sponsors. It preserves footage. It turns athletes into permanent commercial properties. Berning created part of her legacy before the industry had enough capital to protect it. At the 1,968 U.S. Women's Open, she led from beginning to end and defeated Mickey Wright by 3 strokes. Wright was already one of the most dominant golfers the women's game had produced. Berning had been married for only 7 weeks. The victory should have made her unavoidable. Instead, it became one piece of a career that history would later struggle to categorize. She was clearly elite, but she did not resemble the statistical model normally used to define domination. Golf usually rewards accumulation. More victories, more seasons near the top of the money list, more appearances, more weeks in front of cameras. Berning's record developed differently. 4 of her 11 LPGA victories were majors. That means more than 1/3 of her tour wins came in championships carrying the greatest historical weight. It is an extraordinary concentration. It can also confuse a system built to value volume. A player with 40 ordinary victories is easy to explain. A player with 11 wins, 4 majors and 3 national opens requires context. Context is harder to market. Then came Winged Foot. The 1,972 U.S. Women's Open opened with a number that should have ended her chances. 79. Save an over par. It remains the highest first-round score recorded by an eventual champion of the event. Most players do not win a U.S. Women's Open on Thursday. They can lose it. Berning appeared dangerously close. She entered the final round 4 strokes behind. Her daughter Robin was 18 months old. Outside the course, Berning was not living as an athlete protected from distraction. After her rounds, she returned to her family and played with her child. The pressure had nowhere to grow. There was no uninterrupted evening available for imagining disaster. On Sunday, Berning shot 71, 1 under par. She won by 1 stroke. That tournament contains the central piece of the Susie Berning file. She did not recover by overpowering Winged Foot. She reduced the number of ways the course could defeat her. Rain had softened the ground. Drives could plug in the fairways. The rough punished inaccuracy. Berning estimated that she drove the ball only around 220 yards, but she drove it straight. When she missed greens, her short game kept the round alive. When the course demanded patience, she accepted the demand. The opening 79 did not disappear. She simply stopped adding unnecessary damage to it. Modern golf analytics might describe this through dispersion patterns, expected outcomes, and avoidance of high-cost mistakes. Berning had no dashboard showing strokes gained, no launch monitor measuring every fraction of impact, no analytics department converting decisions into probability. Her data appeared on a scorecard. The conclusion was simple. Distance creates opportunity. Control protects the round. Around major championship courses, protection can become a weapon. 1 year later, the pattern returned. At the 1,973 U.S. Women's Open in Rochester, Berning successfully defended her title. This time, the margin was 5 strokes. She became only the 3rd woman at that point to win consecutive U.S. Women's Opens. Her daughter was now 2.5. The player who supposedly lacked the physical power associated with domination had won 3 editions of the game's hardest national championship in 6 years. Not through one lucky week, through repetition. Different courses, different conditions. The same underlying method. There is another side to the story. Berning's defenders can point to the majors. Skeptics can point to everything between them. Her results were not consistently dominant across every season. She finished inside the top 10 on the money list only 3 times, with the last of those appearances coming in 1969. Other Hall of Fame candidates accumulated more victories, remained more visible, or produced longer periods of statistical control. Recognition is not automatic simply because one part of a resume is exceptional. Selection committees must compare careers built under different conditions. That process will always create disagreement. The delay does not prove that anyone deliberately erased Susie Berning. There is no public evidence of a coordinated decision to keep her outside the hall. What remains is not a scandal. It is a measurement problem. Career totals favor players who can maintain full schedules. Money rankings favor the economics of the era in which the money was earned. Media familiarity favors athletes whose careers were recorded, replayed, and distributed. Berning's choices reduced her advantage in all 3 categories. She raised 2 daughters while competing. She did not play every event. She eventually stepped away from full-time competition to prioritize her family. The industry later praised that decision. The historical databases still counted the tournaments she missed. Attention is easy to overlook. Sports celebrate athletes for making human choices. Statistics quietly penalize them for the same choices. A reduced schedule means fewer chances to win. Fewer wins mean lower rankings on historical lists. Lower placement means less media repetition. Less repetition eventually becomes less recognition. No single step appears unfair. Together, the pattern becomes harder to ignore. Berning continued playing for decades and made her final LPGA Tour appearance in 1996. She also created another piece of history. In 1989, she and her daughter Robin became the first mother and daughter pair to compete in the same LPGA Tour event. They played together again 5 years later. The image should have been irresistible. A 3-time national champion, sharing a professional field with the child she had raised while winning majors. Yet even that story rarely became part of golf's permanent public mythology. After competition, Berning moved into instruction. Her philosophy remained consistent. At 5 feet 2 inches, she openly acknowledged that strength and size had not delivered her championships. The short game had her teaching material concentrated on putting greenside bunkers, chipping, and pitching. The message was not complicated. Golfers often search for a swing that looks more powerful. Berning taught them to build a score that was less fragile. The video claimed that nobody listened is powerful. It is also incomplete. Her students listened. Her peers respected her. Golf institutions eventually honored her. But the larger industry rarely built its commercial story around what she represented. Distance is visible. Clubhead speed produces a number that can be advertised. A new driver can be sold. A dramatic swing can be replayed. Patience has no logo. Course management does not create the same spectacle. A recovery putt for par looks less impressive than a towering approach for eagle, even when the par is the shot that protects a championship. The market did not reject Berning's philosophy because it was wrong. The market had difficulty turning restraint into entertainment. That problem continues. Golfers are surrounded by equipment promising additional yards. Technology measures speed, spin, and launch with extraordinary precision. Social media rewards movement that appears powerful in a short clip. Scoring remains less cinematic. It requires decisions that look conservative. Taking more club, aiming away from danger, accepting 20 feet instead of attacking a tucked flag, practicing a 6-foot putt instead of chasing a beautiful driver swing. None of those choices feels revolutionary. Together, they decide tournaments. Berning's career had already demonstrated the pattern decades earlier. At winged foot, the most important number was not her driving distance. It was 79, the number everyone would normally use as evidence that the tournament was already lost. Berning treated it differently, not as a verdict, as a position. 3 rounds remained. The course would punish everyone. Her responsibility was not to erase the mistake immediately. It was to stop the mistake from multiplying. That may have been her most advanced idea. Golf instruction frequently searches for a mechanical cure. Berning understood the psychological economy of a round. One poor score creates urgency. Urgency creates aggressive decisions. Aggressive decisions create larger mistakes. The player is no longer competing against the course. The player is attempting to recover an identity. Berning refused that transaction. She did not need Thursday's score to tell her who she was. By Sunday night, she was the champion. In April 2020, the Hall of Fame finally announced her selection. Berning admitted that younger golf fans often did not know her name. She had assumed another candidate with more LPGA victories and a visible broadcasting career might be chosen instead. Her statement carried no anger. That made it heavier. The achievements were still present. The public memory surrounding them was not. When the induction ceremony was finally held in March 2022, Berning entered the hall alongside Tiger Woods, former PGA Tour Commissioner Tim Finchem, and pioneer Marion Hollins. She was 80 years old. More than 5 decades had passed since her first U.S. Women's Open victory. Susie Maxwell Berning died on the 2nd of October 2024 at the age of 83, following a battle with lung cancer. The official tributes described her as a champion, a pioneer, a teacher, and a model for balancing professional competition with family. All of that was accurate, But tributes often arrive after the system no longer has to decide how much attention a living athlete deserves. Death simplifies the ranking. Everyone agrees to remember. The harder question is why remembering required so much recovery work. Today, Susie Berning's ideas are returning through old footage, instructional videos and stories that present her as a woman decades ahead of her time. Perhaps she was. But the lesson is not merely that golfers should practice their short games. Her career points towards something larger. Power does not always belong to the player who creates the most spectacular shot. Sometimes it belongs to the player who understands which mistakes can be survived. The golf industry learned how to measure speed. It learned how to price celebrity. It learned how to turn distance into a global business. Susie Berning had already identified another form of value: control, patience, the ability to protect a score when everything around it begins to break. 11 victories, 4 majors, 3 US Women's Opens. Those numbers never changed. Only the attention surrounding them did. Maybe nobody completely ignored the evidence. Maybe they simply chose the measurements that were easier to sell. And by the time the game looked again at Susie Berning's scorecard, the warning had been sitting there for 50 years.